Samadhi Rama Krishna Jagat Madhava Devaya Shiva Pranamami Pranamami. I put them on the shelf, like they're kind of in the way. This one is silver, but
the lines are still there.
yeah, all the lines are there. Okay, I'm doing microphone. Check, check. You're making it darker.
Sorry. This is I want.
Okay, okay. You can make it a little brighter in here.
This one. Yeah.
You can bring it up to full light. That's
Oh,
very good,
oh.
very good. Well, thank you very much for making our love songs to God very full of zeal and touching pathos. I just thought of that this is actually what we can call our evening prayer songs, love songs to God. As probably most of you know, the first two songs are composed by Swami Vivekananda on his master, Sri Ramakrishna, as the divine teacher, as the embodiment of divinity. And then the third hymn is a traditional Sanskrit hymn dedicated to Divine Mother from the Chandi, the Durga Saptashati, that text on Divine Mother. And then the fourth hymn is a hymn composed by Swami Abhedananda to Maha, Holy Mother. And so all of them have profound meaning, and actually I hope when we sing them we can keep in mind the meaning and become uplifted. I might just touch on, the first hymn, which is starts out a breaker of the chain or the bondage of this world, Khandanam Bhavabandhana. So interesting, we call it a prayer, but nowhere in this hymn does Swami Vivekananda beg anything from God. Doesn't request anything from his master except one thing. What is that?
Bhakti.
Correct. Devotion, or as he puts it in the song, anurag. Intense attachment for the divine, intense longing for God. So not any, usually we ask so many things of God, right? There's an illness in the family, well, yes, we'll turn to God. There's financial difficulties, yes, we'll turn to God. But this highest prayer, the only thing to seek from the divine is devotion. So this is what Swami Vivekananda has us seeking, is devotion to the Lord, devotion to the divine, in whatever form. These are kind of universal hymns. In fact, the hymn Karnana Bhavabandhana, though Swami Vivekananda wrote it thinking of his master Sri Ramakrishna, but nowhere in the hymn does Sri Ramakrishna's name come. So it's actually a universal hymn of prayer. And I have heard that there's a church in Calcutta where they sing this hymn for Jesus. And there's no contradiction there. because all the great world teachers are, the divinity shines through them. They unleash that power of awakening us from ignorance that passes on then through the chain of disciples. This seems to be slightly sinking. So this is the first hymn, really describing the glories of the divine, describing how, what is the nature of the divine, an ocean of love, shining, this beautiful image of Jagabhushana, a gem at the very heart of the universe. The Swami Prabhupada has beautifully translated it as, "Thou whom the cosmos wears, a diamond at its heart." Jagabhushana. So these are beautiful, beautiful hymns. The second hymn, Om Hring Ritam. Oh, getting storm. The second hymn is a hymn seeking refuge. Where can we go for refuge? There's only one place for the seekers of God to go for refuge, that is in the divine. And this hymn, Swami Vivekananda was a realized soul, he was a world teacher himself. Does he need to pray this prayer? Actually, he's written this hymn for all of us, because we find that though we are spiritual seekers and we do spiritual practice, but we find it's actually not enough. As much as we can do, we do, and still we find so much distance still to go. We find that we haven't yet seen the divine shining in our heart and in everybody's heart and in all things. So then what is to be done? We've tried our best and still we cannot succeed. Then we take shelter, we take refuge in the divine. We surrender everything at the Lord's feet and say, all right, now it's up to you. But we have that safe harbor. And this hymn is remarkable because each verse expresses in a different way why there's no place to go for refuge, or why Sri Ram, in this case it's specifically for Sri Ramakrishna, why Sri Ramakrishna or any embodiment of the divine is the refuge. So the first verse is that I admit I haven't been able to think of you all the time. I haven't been able to worship you all the time. Your blessed feet which remove our ignorance and take us across the ocean of the world. Therefore, and the fourth line repeats every time, Tasmat Tameva Sharanam Mamadina Bandho. Oh my, thou art my only refuge, my only place where I can go to find true, unshakable safety. O friend of the lowly, O friend of the lowly. God is always the friend of the lowly. Sri Ramakrishna used to tell us the story of the parable of the hill, right? And water falls and the water rolls off of the hill and it collects in the low place. So like that, if we are thinking a lot about ourselves, that water of God's grace is going to just roll right off. And it collects in the low places, the places where we acknowledge our inability, where we feel that you let God be everything and I am nothing. Then the second verse is also so touching because we say, well, yes, with devotion, with spiritual practice, with knowledge, with all these things, we can realize the truth. We can realize our true nature as one with the infinite, as infinite consciousness and bliss. But alas, this is the tragedy. I'm saying these words with my lips, but they find no place in my heart. It's only lip deep. In my heart, they don't reach my heart. There's no echo of these words in my heart. Therefore, thou art my only shelter, my only place of refuge. Then that line that he says, in you, if we can love you, we can cross over the ocean of the waves of this world. For your feet, it's a beautiful line, your feet still the waves of death. That's Maranurmi nasham. Marana, urmi, the waves of marana, death. Your feet still those waves. This world is a place of death, no? Life and death both, but we're facing death. We have to face it. How do we face it? Holding on to God. Those waves, those terrifying waves that say that you're going to die. Those are still when we realize that, no, I'm not going to die. Only this body is going to die. This body is going to fall off one day. I am immortal. And we need God's grace to realize that. And the fourth line, eulogizing the glory of the divine name. And for Swami Vivekananda, his Guru, Sri Ramakrishna's name is utterly pure, and so he says, by chanting your name, all the defects, all our mistakes are purified and become blessings for us. And in this world, I have no place of shelter. Thou art the refuge of all. Therefore, I take refuge. I surrender everything to you. You are my sanctuary. Now, perhaps some of you know, there's a hidden mantra in this hymn. Do you know it? The hidden mantra in Om Hrim Ritam? Good. Akhil knows it. How?
What is it?
Look at the first syllable of each of the first 3 lines of each of the first 4 stanzas. Starts with Om Hrim Ritam. Om. Next, Naktam Divam. That means Na. Om Na. Moham Kasham. Mo. Om Namo. Next, Bhaktir Bhagashcha Bhajanam. Bha. Gachan Jalam Srijalam. Ga. Vaktro Dhrito Piridime. Va. Tejas Taranti Tarasa. Te. Om Namo Bhagavate. Then, Rage Krite Ritavate. Ra. Ra. Martyamritam. So Rama. Martyamritam. Then next, Krityam Karoti. Krit. And then this funny line, Shnantam. Why Shnantam? It's so funny that Sri Shna, well, because we need that Shna for Sri Ramakrishna's name. So Rama Krishna, and then last, Yasmadaham Sharano. Ya. So the mantra hidden in this verse is Om Namo Bhagavate Ramakrishnaya. So that's an additional secret of this beautiful hymn. I had actually planned for tonight to read a little from this book, For Seekers of God. This is a book of conversations with Maha Purush Maharaj Swami Shivananda, who was one of Sri Ramakrishna's monastic disciples and became the 3rd president of the Ramakrishna order. He was a powerful spiritual teacher, fully established in his own glory of the divine self, and yet also completely devoted to his master, Sri Ramakrishna. And there are a lot of beautiful instructions in this book about spiritual life, and also we get a glimpse of how does a realized soul live in this world. And some of the humorous sections, some devotee or disciple will come to him and say, "How are you, Maharaj? How are you doing?" He says, "I'm fine. I'm so well." But Maharaj, your body looks so terrible. It looks like you're really ailing. "Oh, you're asking about this body? This body is in very bad shape. Yes, it's on the way out. It's going to die soon. But I am not the body. I am perfectly fine." So we see very clearly in his life that distinction between the body and the self. I thought the nice section, if I can find it, is the instructions he gives in meditation. Because meditation is really an essential part of this path. Swami Vivekananda gave us 4 limbs of yoga, right? The 4 limbs of yoga, what are they?
Raja, Jnana, Bhakti, and Karma.
Good. Raja Yoga, Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Raja Yoga meditation, Jnana Yoga wisdom, Bhakti Yoga devotion, Karma Yoga, yoga of action. We need to blend them all harmoniously together, and they all support each other. But we shouldn't neglect meditation. But how to meditate? It's very difficult. There's no doubt it's difficult. So. 149. Let's see if I can find it. Okay, this is a lot on prayer and meditation. Now keep in mind it's directed especially to Sri Ramakrishna, since Sri Ramakrishna is the teacher of this order and this tradition, and considered as a manifestation of divinity or a conduit of spiritual power. But these instructions are equally applicable towards any manifestation of God. If we are Christians, a Christian could read this and also benefit and feel that, well, this approach to Jesus would also be fine. And in that way, actually, we Vedantists can also read books in Christian spirituality and benefit therefrom. We can understand that when a mystic is talking about meditating on Jesus, we can apply that in our own lives to our own chosen ideal. Because each one of us, that's one of the glories of Vedanta, we don't say everybody has to wear the same jacket. It will be too big on me and it will be too small on you. We each have our own approach to God. As many faiths, so many paths. Each person has her or his own understanding of the divine and our own approach, and we envision the divine in our own unique way. So, of course, in a general way, we have different forms of God, Krishna, Buddha, Christ, but even then, if maybe you are a worshipper of Krishna and I am also a worshipper of Krishna, but you will conceive of him differently. So, the place is Belur Math, our headquarters, our main monastery on the Ganga, the Ganges River, outside of Calcutta, across the river from Calcutta, I should say. A young man, having seen Purush Maharaj in a dream, had informed him about it in a letter. Now he was at the Belur Math for a few days with his permission. That was really something.
Timely.
People would see these great souls in dreams sometimes, but perhaps Swami Shivananda was to be his guru. He'd seen him in a dream beforehand. This happened to Swami Ranganathananda. Ranganathananji had seen his guru, Mahapurush Maharaj, before meeting him in person in a dream. Fascinating. One morning, when Mahapurushji had just returned from the shrine, the young man saluted him with all reverence and said, "Maharaj, you were kind enough to reveal yourself to me in a dream. Now it is my sincerest desire that you should very graciously initiate me with a mantra." As he spoke, he broke into tears and held Mahapurushji's feet with both hands. This is the kind of earnestness, the seeker who's longing for a guru, who's longing to know God and feeling that here is a teacher who can show me the divine. The boy's eagerness touched Mahapurushji's heart, and he said with affection, "My son, I bless you heartily that your devotion, faith, and love for Sri Ramakrishna may be ever on the increase, and that you may advance towards him apace. As for initiation, I know nothing about it, nor do I give initiation to anyone." This was before he began initiating. He began initiating mainly after becoming president, though I think he gave some initiations when he traveled to East Bengal before becoming president. But in October 1918, Maha and Swami Brahmananda were both alive, and they were the only ones giving initiation, so far as I know, unless a few others may have, not when they were traveling outside the area of Belur. So he's going, but see, his always blessings, full of blessings for everyone. I bless you heartily. The Master has not implanted the Guru consciousness in my mind. I am simply his servant, his slave, my son, his son. Besides, I have not yet received from Sri Ramakrishna any mandate to give initiation. This much only I know, that the name Ramakrishna is the greatest mantra in this age. Whoever will take his name with faith will have devotion and liberation as accomplished facts. Ramakrishna is the glorious name of this age. To have liberation, it is enough if one makes japa of his name. To me, it does not appear that there is any need for initiation over and above that. There cannot be the least doubt that anyone who will take refuge in the Master with all his being will be liberated. Quote, he who is Rama, he who is Krishna, has in this age incarnated himself as Sri Ramakrishna for the liberation of living beings. Okay, so this is the faith of Purush Maharaj and the faith of Swami Vivekananda, that Sri Ramakrishna was a special soul born as a manifestation of divinity to uplift the world, to give all humanity a boost. It's generally in public we don't preach Sri Ramakrishna like that, like this as a great spiritual teacher. Swami Vivekananda, when he was in America, he never preached Sri Ramakrishna. He never preached his master. When he came back to India, one of his brother disciples challenged him, "You never even talked about Sri Ramakrishna when you were in America. How is this?" And Swami Vivekananda said, "Well, see, if I had preached Ramakrishna, they would say, 'We have Jesus.' Well, so what? We have our Jesus. What else can you tell us?" But I taught them the principles of Vedanta. And when they would ask me, "Well, this is all fine, but have you ever seen these principles embodied in a person?" Then I can tell them, "Well, yes, my master Sri Ramakrishna embodied these principles." So like that. But these are the intimate conversations of a disciple of Ramakrishna, and so for him, Ramakrishna was his all in all. The devotee. I call on Sri Ramakrishna as much as I can with all sincerity. So he's already a devotee of Sri Ramakrishna. He has been touched by Sri Ramakrishna's grace or his power of attraction, and he's approaching him. And I pray to him as well. Also, I fully believe that he is God himself, who has incarnated for fulfilling the needs of this age. You are one of his intimate apostles. I firmly believe that if your grace descends on me, my life will be wholly fulfilled. Okay, well, this is a matter of faith. I always feel a little hesitant to read these things because Swami Vivekananda made it very clear in his rules for the order that all will accept Sri Ramakrishna in their own light. So you study his life, you can definitely understand he was a great yogi, he was a great teacher. To say he is God himself incarnated in human form, well, that's Swami Vivekananda apparently held that view. But he would never preach it, so that's an important distinction. All right. The devotee asks some questions about spiritual practice. He asks, how should I make japa? Is there any rule for this? Japa means repetition of God's name. Oh, well, Mahapurushji explains it. He says, japa is but mentally uttering God's name again and again with love. Okay, so there's three aspects to it. Four aspects. One is the divine name, the holy name, which is tremendously powerful. It is not different from the divine. Whichever name we choose. Second, we are repeating it. How? Mentally within. The three kinds of japa. We actually pronounce the mantra aloud. Then we may pronounce it so quietly, just the lips moving a little bit, and then without any external manifestation at all. This is the highest form, where we don't even the lips don't move, and this is surprisingly difficult. We find that as we go on repeating the mantra, though we may not even, the lips may not be moving, but perhaps the tongue is moving just a little inside the mouth. It's, there's still, because thought, and in fact I heard about a study which found that even when we think, there are subtle nervous impulses of the nerves which come to the lips and the tongue when we're thinking. We think in words very often. When we're thinking in words, those impulses also come to the vocal instrument, this instrument. So the highest form of japa, that connection is, that link is broken, and it's simply repeated mentally without any physical manifestation at all. And that's when it becomes very deep. So, and then how do we do it? Repeatedly. We repeat it again and again because the mind is going to run everywhere. So the name is so useful. We just take it, and then before the mind has a chance to run elsewhere, we repeat it again. The same name. It sounds terribly boring. It's not boring. Once we get a taste of the name, that's Sri Chaitanya used to say, that's very important. Namyo ruchi. You get a taste for the name. It gives us joy as we go on repeating it with love. Go on doing so, and that practice will bring you joy. Mahapurush says it. That practice will bring you joy. There is no set rule for japa. You can do it at all times and under all conditions, while walking, eating, lying down, sleeping, or dreaming. Though even in dream, if we do a lot of japa, when we go to sleep, the name will continue. And we wake up with the name still going. This is when it becomes constant. This is not a matter of beginners. This comes when we become advanced adepts in the practice of japa. But it's a very powerful practice, and it's comparatively easy, right? We can do it. We should do it at some time, sitting quietly without doing anything else. But while we're walking, while we're cooking, while we're doing things which don't require a lot of mental energy, it's very easy to continue doing japa. When we're doing something that requires more mental energy, like writing a report, or writing a paper, or organizing a symposium, or whatever we may be doing that requires more mental work, it may be difficult to continue japa. But so much of our days, let's face it, so much of our day is not involved in heavy mental work. Even if we're going to so-called work, a job, right? And there's quite a bit, maybe some of the time we're answering emails and having meetings and thinking about things and planning. And then we go, we have to make some copies of a document, and we take it to the copy machine and we're running the copies or whatever we're doing. Or maybe that doesn't happen anymore. Maybe it's all digital now. But anyhow, there's plenty of time when you're doing more or less mindless things. You don't need to focus the mind. Perfect. Do a little japa. The more earnestness you have in your practice, the greater will be the joy. He dwells in our hearts and judges everything in accordance with how the heart acts. If the heart has the true craving, if you call on him with sincere longing, the result will be directly perceptible. He's giving us a guarantee. If you practice, you will get some results. But practice. You have to practice to get the results. But do some practice with longing. This Sri Ramakrishna also emphasized this as the fundamental ingredient in spiritual life, longing. We have to, whatever we want, what do we try for? Why will we try for something if we don't want it? You want to get good grades in school, so you study hard. You even give up some things. You give up going out. You give up watching television all afternoon. Why? Because you want to get good grades, so you're going to study. Otherwise, why will you study? Or perhaps you want to know about something. You're genuinely interested in something. You want to know about it, so you study it. If you're not interested in it, why would you study it? Someone wants to win the marathon with great desire to win the marathon. Well, she'll go on training, diet, strictly early to bed, early to rise, early morning, going on long runs, training, because she wants to win the marathon. So when we want God, then it becomes easy to work for God. See, she has no trouble getting up at 4 in the morning to go on her morning run and train and get ready for the marathon. Why? Because she really wants it. If we really want God, then it's easy to get up at 4 in the morning for our meditation and all of that. So this longing. Like a child demanding things from its father with tearful eyes, crave for faith, devotion, and love from him. You are sure to get them. He is living and wakeful God, the Savior of the fallen, the remover of the sins of desire and age, full of the supreme compassion, the lover of his devotees, and full of love. Go on calling on him all the time. In addition to this, so one, call on him. It's interesting because sometimes we say, we pray to God. But how Mahapurush puts it, and how Sri Ramakrishna often also used to put it, is not, in of course, in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, translated from Bengali, the word prayer, you would translate as prarthana, right? You say prarthana karo, pray to God. But actually, Sri Ramakrishna doesn't say that. He says, daku, call. And that suggests, behind that calling, that suggests, doesn't it, a kind of a longing, that we're calling on God, oh Lord, come. It's not just prayer, but when I think of prayer, I think of, the image of the child kneeling by his bed, before bed, and saying, oh God, please protect my family, and please, blah, 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 blah. And then you go to bed, your prayers before bed. This is not that kind of prayer. This is a call. The heart's yearning, the heart wants God and naturally calls on God. Go on calling on him all the time. In addition to this constant remembrance, it is very necessary to sit for japa regularly in the morning and in the evening, every day, at a fixed place and at a fixed time. Go on doing so. This is our tradition. See? In the morning and the evening, twice a day, if possible. Every day, same place, same time. There was that TV show Batman. Did you ever see it? Probably it was before your time, but it used to be a kind of comedy. But as kids, we watched it. It was so exciting because Batman would get in trouble, and usually at the end of the program, he would be placed in some situation that seemed that there was no escape, and that's where it would end, right? Call it a cliffhanger, and then the voice would come on. Tune in next time. Same bat time, same bat channel. So like that, we have to tune in next time. Every time, same channel, same place. It's very helpful. Why? Because the mind is a creature of habit. So we train the mind. If we decide, today I don't feel like meditating in the morning, maybe I'll meditate a little bit later after breakfast. And we have our breakfast and okay, I'll meditate now. And then the next day, breakfast comes and I don't feel like meditating now either, so we push it to the afternoon. So make a routine. Swami Swahanandaji used to say, the founding Swami of this center, he used to say, bind yourself to a routine. It's tremendously helpful in spiritual life because the mind is a habit. So it's okay, whether I feel like it or not, I'm going to do my spiritual practice. Some days I feel like it, some days I don't feel like it. But if we make the determination, I'm going to do it every day, gradually the mind gets trained, gradually the mind learns. And we're sure to go further, make more progress in meditation if we do it the same time every day, and as much as possible, and the same place. Then that place starts gaining some holiness. It happens. We start to feel, we simply need to sit down in that same chair or before in our little meditation nook or wherever we have a place to meditate, and as we sit down, automatically the mind starts realizing, yes, now is the time for meditation. And so it's a great help. Then the devotee asks, how shall I meditate, Maharaj? I try to meditate, but I don't know what meditation really is. and they don't succeed much in concentrating the mind. Okay, that's our condition most of the time. It's difficult to meditate, no doubt. And the true meditation is called is likened to a stream of oil poured from one vessel to another. The mind becomes one-pointed. How if you pour water, it drips. No, it's a rough stream, and some drips will fall here and there. But oil, it's a single stream without any disturbance. It's beautiful to watch that oil poured from one vessel to another. Like that, the mind pours into the divine in an unbroken flow. And so it's a very advanced state. What we call meditation actually is trying to meditate. We try to meditate. So Mahapurushji also says that's true. He says it is a bit difficult to have concentration in the initial stages. Meditation becomes more natural when one gets real love for God as a result of His grace and one's constant prayer and japa. Okay. It's so easy to think of something we love, isn't it? Maybe we have when as teenagers in college or high school we fall in love with someone. We're constantly thinking of that person. Constantly thinking. We can't stop thinking. Even if we wanted to stop thinking, we couldn't stop thinking of that person. Right? And then after some time we fall out of love with that person. Then that problem no longer comes. We don't think about that person anymore. So can we fall in love with God? That's being asked here. When we intensely love someone, we're always thinking of them. Now, a more mature love is say love that we have for our parents or our spouses. And that's not that it kind of intensely, and yet that love, we always know that person is there. We always feel that if it's a mature love. So when our love for God matures, it becomes very deep and abiding, and then we always have that remembrance never goes away completely. And when we sit for meditation, then the mind naturally falls into thinking of God. Why? Because we love God. We love God. Our chosen manifestation of the divine. And how does that love come? Well, constant prayer and japa are great helps, says Mahapurushji, but grace is also required. It comes through grace. And yet, as the Ramakrishna says, the wind of God's grace is always blowing. But what do we have to do if we want to catch it? What do we have to do? Say we have a boat on the lake and the wind is blowing. We have to raise the sail. And if we raise the sail, we catch the wind. So that's said that God's grace is always there. It's always blowing like a wind. But we have to raise the sail of our boat to catch it. And how do we raise the sail? By doing this, by calling on God, by practicing japa and meditation, by doing worship, by scriptural study, whatever method of spiritual practice most appeals to us, that's called raising the sail on our boat, so we can catch the wind of grace which is always blowing. Instead, so then he suggests for real beginners here, instead of starting with meditation, it is much better in the first stage to sit before the portrait of Sri Ramakrishna. Or we can add, if your chosen ideal is Mother Kali, or Jesus, or Mary, or Kali, or Shiva, or sit before a portrait. But here he's teaching him how to meditate on Sri Ramakrishna. It is much better in the first stage to sit before the portrait of Sri Ramakrishna like a tearful child with a persistent demand. Mommy, I want it. Mommy, I want it. Daddy, I want it. Daddy, Daddy, please, 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 please. Like a tearful child with a persistent demand, and pray with earnestness to Him who is ever holy, free from passion and lucre, pure, untouched by sin, full of compassion, the prophet of this age and the teacher of the world. Pray like this, and then he gives a prayer. He gives actual prayer that we can memorize. We can memorize a prayer like this and recite it every day for a week and see what happens. Lord, you incarnated yourself to save the world, and you suffered all kinds of pain for the good of humanity. Here am I, a lowly poor creature without spiritual practices, adoration, knowledge, devotion, faith, or love. Be gracious and fill me with faith, devotion, knowledge, love, and purity. Make my human birth fruitful. Be gracious enough to reveal yourself in my heart. Grant me your vision. One of your own spiritual sons taught me to pray like this. Take pity on me. Now this is interesting because usually in Vedanta, I especially like to emphasize that we remember our own true spiritual being as in pure consciousness and bliss. Our true nature is pure consciousness and bliss, one with the divine. And yet here he's saying, pray, oh, I'm lowly, I have no devotion. So this is in the path of bhakti, in the path of devotion. Not that I will think I am a sinner or that I am weak. This is very harmful. And yet, I have to acknowledge that though I want to have tremendous faith and devotion, actually, I don't have it. Not in my limited being, my personality, this body-mind complex whom I call Swami, Maha who is striving to realize God. There's not yet enough devotion here. I don't shed tears when I repeat God's name. Well, that means I haven't yet attained. So that's this kind of prayer. So we recognize that though we may have made some progress in spiritual life, still I haven't attained that kind of love and devotion and faith. So we pray like this. If you go on praying like this, His grace will descend. Then the mind will be calmed and it will be fixed in japa and meditation. You will be filled with love and joy, and hope will dawn in you. This is amazing. He doesn't say, so much of meditation instruction actually is, okay, sit straight and hold your spine erect and breathe regularly, and then imagine, visualize the Lord seated on the lotus of your heart, and all these instructions. Here he's saying, none of that. He's not giving you any of that. He's simply saying, pray. Don't try to meditate, just pray, and go on praying and go on calling and calling with longing, and then naturally love will awaken. And once that love comes, meditation becomes easy. You don't need to be taught all these special processes and all that. Love will take you there. So of course we have all the four. We have Bhakti Yoga, we also have Raja Yoga. So yes, we can learn to sit properly and breathe. But this is wonderful teaching. And I think often we neglect prayer. In the Vedanta tradition, we neglect prayer a little bit. We do some scriptural study and japa and meditation. But prayer, that's for beginners or something, or that's when we get in trouble. But not as part of spiritual practice, not as part of our contemplative discipline. And perhaps Christian mystics have developed to a very high level the discipline of what they call contemplative prayer. That's exactly what Mahapurush is describing here, contemplative prayer. Prayer uttered with intense longing and sincerity. It's a beautiful prayer. So pray earnestly in this way, and then make japa just as I have told you. If you go on making japa of His holy name, meditation will gradually become natural to you. As you go on repeating His name, try to visualize with the fullest conviction that He is looking at you affectionately. When this kind of thought continues for a long time, it becomes meditation. So this idea that we start with prayer, then we repeat the name, we do japa, and that ripens into meditation. That what we were discussing about the flow of oil from one container to another, it comes naturally as we go on practicing. We have to practice. That's the main thing. And one more prayer he gives us. When you make japa, when you do the repetition, pray in this way. Lord, help me to have deep meditation. He will grant the prayer, have no doubt about it. He is the Guru in everybody's heart. He is the guide, the Lord, Father, Mother, and friend. Oh, it goes on. This chapter is full of suggestions for prayer and describing glories. Let's see. We have another 10 minutes. We'll go carry on. By the by, we don't have to be so formal. If you have questions, interrupt me. I forgot to mention that. You have a question?
No. Maybe we'll have one song also from.
At the end?
Yeah.
Sure. Who's going to sing the song?
You are here, no one else.
I'm sure there's some of our young people here have some songs they can share at the end. You have a song? No?
Me?
Yeah.
No.
Okay, well, let's see. We'll see what happens. Let's read a little more. So now he gives, he's going to discuss a little more about meditation. Meditation consists in lovingly thinking of his gracious form or his auspicious qualities in whatever way you can. There are, of course, many different kinds of meditation, but most commonly known in, certainly in America, in sort of popular culture and in medicine. You know, the medical practice also, meditation is being touted as as better than blood pressure medication. Teach your patients to meditate, and it works. Mostly, what kind of meditation is it? Mostly, mindfulness. Mostly mindfulness meditation, which is good, and it comes from Buddha's teaching. It's a Buddhist practice. In Vedanta, in the Hindu tradition, we don't. Maybe mindfulness may be a little bit useful in the sort of the jnana path, the approach through wisdom, to still the mind, to begin to still the mind. But actually, it's not much part of our way of meditation. We have much more this idea of focusing the mind. Mindfulness is rather just observing everything and letting it pass. And as something comes up, we name it. And I've been to a guided mindfulness meditation a few times, where the teacher will say, just if a thought arises in your mind, just say thinking and let it go. And if an itch comes on your knee, just name it in your mind, itch on my knee. Just notice it and then let it go. And it can be an effective way to steady the mind and simply watch. And with some practice, the mind starts to slow down. And the actual purpose of it is not to get calmness and lower your blood pressure. The actual purpose is to go to the next step where it becomes deeper concentration. And then the idea is to get deep insight into one's own true nature, which according to the Theravada Buddhists at least, is emptiness. That there's no me. Where I'm thinking there's me, there's no me. And that insight comes. So it's in mindfulness meditation leading to insight meditation. That's the Buddhist path. But our path in Vedanta, generally we follow a positive path of focusing the mind on the divine. And how do we do that? With the help of the name, with the help of perhaps an image, with the help of divine qualities, as Maharaj is describing now. Thinking of his gracious form or his auspicious qualities in whatever way you can. For the present, you go on practicing thus. As you progress, he himself will tell you from within, whenever the occasion arises, how you are to proceed further in your meditation. Sri Ramakrishna also used to say the mind becomes the guru. In time, as our mind gets purified and matured, we will know how to proceed further. But at the beginning, some instruction is very helpful. And this we're getting from Maharaj tonight. Pray with the greatest yearning and weep. It's not so easy to weep for God, you know. Sri Ramakrishna used to say, kind of humorous and kind of tragic. People shed jugs full of tears for their families, for money, for their bodies. Who weeps for God? Sri Ramakrishna himself wept so much for God. Tears will wash away the dirt from your heart, and he will reveal his true nature there out of his own grace. Heart. You know, that's another point, that we emphasize meditation on the heart. In mindfulness meditation, they will often tell you to notice the passage of the air passing through your nostrils. So your mind is actually becoming highly aware of the air passing in and out of the nostrils. We don't do that. Sri Ramakrishna used to recommend meditate in the heart. Another place to meditate is between the eyebrows and the forehead. This is generally discouraged in our tradition. It's considered the very advanced state. Your mind will let you know when it's safe to meditate there. But people who meditate here, if you're not ready for that, you can get headaches, you can get eye trouble. We don't recommend it. The Upanishad also says, where is the seat of the Atman? In the Guha, the cave of the heart. The Atman of the size of a thumb means as we can meditate on the shining light deep within, here in the heart. That's the Upanishad gives us the hint. That's where the connection between our physical form and our mental apparatus and the divine is most readily accessed here. So that's the teaching. All this does not come in a single day. It takes time, all of a sudden. Continue in your effort diligently and call on Him. The response is bound to come, and with it, bliss. All right. Yes.
It's a very practical question. For people who are not formally initiated, and I mean, in this story, Sri Ramakrishna is very clearly the reference. There's no doubt about, for the rest of us who are drifting in contemporary world, etc. And when you choose a mantra, you choose your Ishta Devata, but there's a lot of doubt that comes along with this process.
Right.
There's a lot of doubt it's like worse than getting married. It's like, is this the right person? Like, should I have an open relationship with God, like Vishnu and Shiva? And I'm joking, but I mean, it's
funny. I love it.
There's anxiety on that.
I got you. That's why in the Hindu tradition and the Vedanta tradition, the guru is also important.
I know, but you can't find a guru on the yellow pages. It's sort of
right. True. But it's also said that the guru comes when the disciple is ready.
And until then, what does one do?
Yes. Well,
that chap has got it easier.
Just there's a couple of things. One, in the beginning of spiritual life, but you've been practicing for a while, I think. In the beginning of spiritual life, you can make it's a little bit like a science experiment. You try. Let me try this kind of meditation for 2 weeks and see. Let me try that kind. Let me see how I feel repeating the name of Vishnu. Let me see how I feel repeating the name of Shiva. Which one do I feel more drawn to? So in the beginning, we can maybe I like to try the Buddhist meditation too. I'll go to a Buddhist center and I'll try meditating. What is my path? Discerning one's path. That's true. But at a certain point, you start to feel within which path you're drawn to. But exactly, that's why the teacher is also recommended. Why? Because if we have to choose our teacher carefully. So it said we should examine our teacher, and there are certain qualifications for the teacher, including selflessness, no motive except for helping people. The teacher should be pure in heart, no crookedness there. They should know the spirit of the scriptures, not necessarily that the teacher can rattle off verses of the Upanishads, but should know the spirit of the scriptures. And in our tradition, and though this is a little bit of a delicate issue because there are many gurus now who charge money. And in our tradition, there's no charge. Spiritual teachings cannot be sold. And it's delicate because there are some big gurus, and maybe they're also teaching good things, no doubt. But if you have to pay, if there's a charge, you have to pay $500 for the initiation. You want to do this special course, it's another $1,000. then it feels funny to me, because in our tradition, now at the time of initiation in our tradition, there usually the new initiate will make an offering to the guru, symbolically with some fruits. Some fruits are brought, offered to the guru, and also a monetary donation is given. That's tradition. But I remember the secretary to the president in Baylor Mutt in India, who gives the initiation there, he was explaining to someone about the initiation, and then he said, and then there's also the dakshina, that's a requirement you have to give. It's entirely up to you, 1 rupee or 1 lakh rupees. It's entirely up to you. 1 rupee means, a few pennies, or 1 lakh rupees means thousands of dollars. It's up to you. Something you have to give as a tradition, you make some offering, but it doesn't, there's no fixed fee, but it has to be this much, and the more money you give them, the more powerful the initiation, nothing like that. So that's one thing. In the Ramakrishna order, the Swamis who are heads of centers in this country are authorized to grant initiation. Most of them almost all of them grant initiation. I think probably Swami Bhaskarananda in Seattle, probably he's now stopped because he's in frail health and he's quite elderly. I'm guessing he may not be giving initiation anymore. And I know that Swami Sarvapriyananda, who everybody loves and who everybody wants to be their guru, he doesn't give initiation. And I think perhaps partly because he'll be overwhelmed if he starts. There'll be too many people seeking initiation from him, perhaps. And he feels he gives what he has to give in his classes. So I've talked with him about it before. He's very clear that he's not interested in giving initiation, so don't bother him about it. But I know Swami Sarvadevananda, when he comes here and visits here, he grants spiritual initiation here itself at this ashrama. But so that's a great help for finding a teacher. But you have to make sure you have the right teacher, and you will find the right teacher. And it said that when you're ready for the teacher, so get ready. We have to prepare ourselves. Pray for that. Pray for a teacher, and continue seeking. But that's a really good point. That's why a teacher is important, because it removes that doubt. My teacher has assigned me to practice this way. Otherwise, just as you said, I'll be tempted because at a certain point, spiritual life can get very tough. There are times when it gets very difficult. Right at the beginning, especially right after initiation, we call it honeymoon period. In the marriage, there's a honeymoon period. In spiritual life, also there's a honeymoon period. And we feel joy, and we start to meditate, and we start to feel this uprush of joy, and we think, this is great, spiritual life is wonderful. And that lasts for a while, and then it starts getting tough. And then the old tendencies of the mind start reasserting themselves. And then we find that initial surge of enthusiasm dwindles. And then what do? Well, maybe it's the wrong teacher, maybe it's the wrong tradition, maybe I should have been a Buddhist instead. And so you go to the Buddhists, and there it also gets difficult. Sri Ramakrishna illustrates this by the parable of, which parable? Pop quiz.
Well,
The well. Okay, good. Akila's sharp tonight. A man is going to dig a well outside his house. In India, you need water. Well, in Bengal at least, you start digging and you'll get water. But he starts digging at one spot, and there's lots of rocks. And he thinks, this is a bad spot. Let me dig over there instead. So he goes over there and he starts digging, and he hits a bed of clay, really hard clay. It's really hard digging. So and this is not a good spot. Let me go over there and dig. And there he hits a bed of sand, which is also, he thinks, no, this is not a good spot for having a well. I don't want a sandy well. So what happens? Does he get water? He never gets water. He's dug many different wells, but he never dug deep enough. So any place he would have got water. That's the idea. If we dig deep enough, we'll get water. The water is flowing there. Different spiritual paths will take us to the goal, but we have to follow it. We have to follow it to the completion. At least the traditions which are, you can say, verified by the saints and sages who have trod those paths. Not the newfangled something or other that someone has just come up with, but the spiritual traditions which have spiritual lineages which have been practiced for hundreds and thousands of years even. They all lead to spiritual illumination. But if we do one for a while and then try another one, we won't get anywhere. That's still like floating on the surface. Sri Ramakrishna says we have to dive deep. So dig your well in one place. So when the going gets tough, we can go to our teacher and say, yeah, I'm really having a hard time. What to do? Teacher can give us some more advice. But we stick with it. No matter when it gets tough, we still stick with it. That's the idea of the guru or spiritual teacher. I've talked a lot. My God. In Hollywood, we don't talk so much. Once in every other week, I have a class. So every other week, I talk a lot for an hour. This is from our library here. This book. It's available online also. I found it online somewhere for Seekers of God. There's actually, Gustavo, it's a Brazilian website.
Oh yeah?
estudantedavedanta.org.
Oh wow.
And there's a lot of teaching of Sri Ramakrishna in Portuguese, and also a lot of English books. They've scanned a lot of these books. PDFs.
Oh,
and
nice.
this book, I believe, is on that website in a PDF format. It's a great resource because you can get a lot of these traditional books. I think they haven't quite done it with permission, but it's okay. These are old books, and possibly the copyright will have expired. Anyhow, Mother knows. Possibly not also, but anyhow, I think it's fine. So I think that's probably enough talk. Any more questions or comments?
In India, when we have this question, right, which is our chosen ideal, which is our path. So when there is a lot of confusion, Swamiji suggests that we should pray to our Kula Devata, because ancestors have been following for a long time. So if you pray to Kula Devata for a long time, then something will turn.
I'm sorry, who do you pray for?
Kula Devata means the family deity. Say in a particular family has been following a tradition, and the family deity, whether it be Shiva or Divine Mother or one or another form of Vishnu. Like in Sri Ramakrishna's home, the family deity was Raghuvir, the hero of the Raghu clan, in other words Rama. And his father was a worshipper of Rama. Though there was also a Shiva there and there was also Divine Mother, but he was mainly devoted to Rama. And he named his children Rameshwar, Ramkumar and Ramakrishna. So his three sons.
Maharaj, if you can touch a little bit on Manas Puja. Yesterday you were talking about that in Puja.
Mm-hmm.
Manas Puja, Sri Ramakrishna. If you can touch a little bit, I know.
That's a big that's a big subject.
Just a little bit, maybe 1-2 minutes.
Yeah, because actually, I mean, the Manasa Puja is an essential part of our worship service here. When we do the puja, before we worship, we make certain offerings and we lay fruits and sweets before the altar, and we feel that Sri Ramakrishna is accepting them. But before we do that, we do the puja internally, and that's called Manasa Puja. So, as I told in the puja, that's about all there is to tell about it. I gave I described how it goes. Whether you offer the lotus of the heart as a seed and those things. More than that, we can talk sometime. But that now I think is not the time to go in depth on that.
Maharaj, following up on Akhil's statement about the Kula Devata, suppose we don't have Kula Devata, is the Gotra the same thing? For example, my Gotra is Shakti. Does it mean that we are devotees of Shakti?
Your what is Shakti?
Gotra.
Well, see, now you're in the area that I don't know much about.
Well, Kula Devata, every family doesn't have. As far as I know, in Bengal, it's not very common.
Do you have any particular hankering for any particular form of God?
Not really.
Not really.
Avatara Varishtaya Ramakrishna.
Then you can pray to Ramakrishna. You come here, when you go to the church, pray to Jesus. When you come here, pray to Ramakrishna.
They need wells.
But at a certain point, you have to choose one. That's true. Come to when Swami Sarvadevananda comes next. You ask him. Ask him for some guidance. All right. I think we should stop here. It's already 8:40. Let's take just a moment of silence, and we just reflect on the teachings we received today. Asato ma satgamaya, tamaso ma jyotirgamaya, mrityorma mritam gamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. From the unreal, lead us to the real. From darkness, lead us unto light. From death, lead us to immortality. Om peace. Gayatri is also a good prayer, for if you don't have a particular form. Gayatri is the universal light, you could say, praying to the Ishvara. We ran out of time for a song, but it's okay.